As our community enters into its third decade, we're very conscious that the roots have gone down deep into the Christian world. The Christian ecumenical community has come into being, which brings people of different generations together and has opened us into a rich and wonderful dialogue with the followers of other faiths and with the secular world. But as these roots have gone deeper, we've also been aware that branches have begun to spread. And so we've developed a program, an outreach of our community that we are calling Meditatio. The Meditatio allows us to develop these branches while remaining rooted in the tradition and in the essential simplicity of our teaching. From a house in Kensington in London, we're able to coordinate many aspects of this new outreach. Meditatio will proceed through a series of seminars on an annual basis in which we will engage in dialogue with experts and practitioners in these different fields. The symbol of the world community is an ancient Christian, indeed an ancient religious symbol, of two birds sitting on the edge of a cup or a chalice, one representing the contemplative life and the other the active life. And the world community expresses, like any true contemplative organization or contemplative community, this balance between contemplation and action. No genuine contemplative life can exist without expressing itself in terms of justice, peace, and compassion. The fruits of meditation are really the fruits of the Spirit. St. Paul describes these as love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, fidelity, gentleness, and self-control. And we find these fruits of meditation, the fruits of the Spirit, both at an individual, personal level and in the life of a community. The meeting of world religions in a spirit of friendship and collaboration for the good of the world is one of the most important developments in modern times. Meditation is crucial to this deepening of interreligious friendship and dialogue. We find meditation at the heart of every one of the great religious traditions. And by entering into that heart of our own tradition, the contemplative core of our own spiritual path, we find the common ground of humanity. By sharing and experiencing this common ground, we find ourselves empowered to work together in very real and practical ways for the well-being of the world and for the relief of the poor, the relief of human suffering, and the promotion of peace and justice. In 1994, the Dalai Lama led the John Main Seminar, which became a milestone in the history of interreligious dialogue, when he spent several days commenting from his Buddhist perspective upon the teachings of Jesus in the Gospel. One of the fruits of the Good Heart Seminar was the Way of Peace. This began as a 3-year program with the Dalai Lama, incorporating the elements of pilgrimage to each other's sacred sites, of retreat together, and also of sharing in the work of bringing healing and reconciliation to those parts of the world which were troubled by violence or conflict. In the year 2000, the Dalai Lama led other presenters of the John Main Seminar in an important initiative in Belfast in Northern Ireland. After the 3-year process, the Way of Peace continued as a way of illustrating the contribution of contemplation, contemplative life, and of interreligious dialogue to the healing of the divisions within the human family. Our dialogue with the Muslim world began with an important seminar in York University, which brought together about 200 Christians and Muslims, young people and scholars, to reflect upon the common ground of their contemplative traditions. In Sarajevo, we worked to try to bring reconciliation between the Christian and Muslim communities. And in New York University, Muslim and Christian students were able to come together in that same spirit of dialogue and friendship grounded in the practice of meditation. In many ways, in the developed world, meditation is seen to be restricted to the middle classes. But meditation is a way of poverty of spirit, as Jesus describes it. And therefore it is especially relevant to those people who are materially poor. And the work of our community has brought us into contact with the poor in the favelas of Brazil, in the villages of Indonesia or India. In Haiti, I was amazed to see the response in this poorest of all countries in the Western Hemisphere of the poor to meditation. There is a special significance in teaching meditation in the developing world. The sense of self, the true self, the sense of real human dignity that arises through the practice of meditation has a powerful and important contribution to make to social justice and to change in our world. Perhaps it is in seeing the natural and beautiful response of children to meditation that we can all understand better how simple and natural meditation is. Children can meditate, and they like to meditate, and their response teaches us something very important about the meaning of our own spiritual journey. The teaching of meditation to children opens our eyes both to the real meaning of meditation, a simple and natural way of spiritual growth and development, of bringing our humanity into wholeness and harmony. But it also gives us an insight into how we can allow our children to make a better world. Our hope for the environment, our hope for better standards of living, quality of life, our hope for more truly humane values, for the moderation that we need in order to protect our ecology. These are essential intuitive values that have to grow in us from childhood on. And so the teaching of meditation to children is a real contribution to the healing of our wounded world. Students and young adults today face enormous challenges. Life is full of unpredictable situations, many difficult choices. Meditation can offer them a life-giving simplicity and a refreshing way of finding clarity in these confusing situations. At the John Main Center for Meditation and Interreligious Dialogue at Georgetown University, the center offers daily meditation twice a day and also a support and encouragement to learn meditation in these formative years.
To me, it's really a way to kind of take yourself away from the stresses that especially students can so often get wrapped up in. And especially here at Georgetown, there are so many students that are really, really motivated and focused, and you have to study and work hard to get to where we are. And it kind of helps you to find a simpler meaning in life and a deeper meaning in life. Even if it is just for that 30 minutes and then you go back to the student life, it helps you to be more centered. And as midterms came, because we're doing midterms right now, I found that it really helped me to not to be less focused, but to be more calm and tranquil about it. And it's helping me, even with my studies. So
first, you're sort of very, very focused on getting the actual practice down right. You're sort of thinking more about what you're supposed to do rather than what you're trying to get out of it. And so the first few, I think that it's very difficult to figure out what you're really trying to get at from the first few meditations. You're so worried about, am I sitting upright? Am I thinking about the mantra too much? But then I think once you get past that period, then you can sort of reflect more on how you've progressed.
One of the great spiritual movements of modern times is the 12-step program, the way of dealing with addiction, one of the great problems of the modern world. The 11th step is to find God through prayer and meditation.
Meditation in the context of the 11th step, for me, means something practical, something experiential. Before meditation, my concept of a higher power and contact with a higher power was largely something intellectual. Now it's something that I have a method to practice and a way to feel. So progressively, it's become something more and more of the heart and less of the head.
At a certain stage in this program of recovery, many people discover in meditation a way of living that 11th step at the deepest and fullest level. One of the ways in which Christianity is being renewed and indeed even rediscovered in our own time is to see it as a way of healing. The early Christians saw Jesus as the divine physician, the Eucharist as the medicine of immortality. The language of the early church was much more about healing than of judgment or moral condemnation. And it's in the contemplative renewal of the church that we rediscover the true meaning of health, of healing, the therapy of prayer. This finds expression in our community in the way in which many meditators bring the gift of contemplative prayer to those who are sick or to those who are dying.
That capacity, that availability of an ocean of oneness and peace, the fact that that is immediately available to all of us if we stop spinning our wheels long enough just to recognize it. That has been very, very real.
Meditation prepares us for death, because every time we meditate, we are dying. We are experiencing what death is. It's not easy. It's a loss. It's a separation. And yet at the same time, it's teaching us that we don't need to fear it, because it isn't the end. It isn't extinction. It isn't obliteration. It is death. But it is a passage. It is a part of the journey. In some hospitals, meditators run programs introducing meditation to the patients and to the carers. There are not many people in the world today who don't recognize that something has gone wrong with the way we do business and with our attitude to work. Developing a right attitude to work and right ways of approaching profit, commercial development, the use of the environment, these are intuitive responses that have to grow from an inner experience of what is good, the goodness of human nature. These are not values that can only be imposed by law or by force from the outside.
The recent financial crisis was symptomatic of the culture of greed and short-termism that had come to pervade our business world in the last 20 years or so. Action is being taken to prevent a recurrence of similar crises, such as legislative action for international financial reform, improvements in standards of corporate governance, and changes to incentive compensation systems. But for lasting change to take place, there has to be a change of consciousness in the way we do business. This transformation of consciousness has to happen, first of all, at a personal level. For it is said, "Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me."
By experiencing the community that meditation creates, we are able to understand the meaning of meditation for the world we're living in today. We live in a world of crisis. In so many areas of the world, in many areas of our lives, we discover that we are in crisis. The word for crisis means judgment in Greek. The Chinese character for crisis means both opportunity but also danger. In discovering meditation, the great common human wisdom of this path of interiority, this path of silence, stillness and simplicity, we discover a way of approaching that crisis to make it a time of growth, a time of evolution for human consciousness. The essence of meditation is attention. The essence of attention is being simple, being present, being awake. It is this quality of simple being, of simple attention, that will allow the teaching of meditation to make its most effective contribution to the world in which we are moving into a new and potentially better future. We hope that this simplicity, which is at the heart of meditation itself, will teach us that the heart of the human being is itself a place of wonder, of beauty, of generosity, of goodness, and of love. The simplicity of the human heart is what meditation is all about.
Welcome you again to Christian Meditation in this series, Christian Meditation Prayer of the Heart. And we have the great pleasure of being joined today by Rhonda Mango. Rhonda is the foundress and director of Living Water Community and Trinity TV, where we sit today and through which we are beamed to you in Trinidad and Tobago, in the region, and now via YouTube, up on the website to the World Community for Christian Meditation. That's part of Living Water. So we are very, very grateful and happy and that Rhonda has found some time for us today. And we are going to do together a little bit of reflection on what we have just seen, particularly from the viewpoint of contemplative prayer. So thank you, Rhonda.
It's my pleasure, my dear.
Thank you so much for joining me and for agreeing to spending this time. When we looked at the video together, you and I, we were both struck by how full it is and how many various topics and angles Father Lawrence has just covered. But one of the sort of consistent things in it is his focus on contemplative prayer and also how contemplative prayer leads to action.
Right.
I would tend to think that you are you sort of very much a living example of a contemplative for whom action, as expressed here, and all the various ministries of Living Water, is evident to all of us. Tell me about your prayer life, yours, and where and if and where I'm right that the contemplative form of prayer is. What it means to you and where it sort of fits.
Well, it's lovely for me to be here. Thank you for inviting me. And it's always a privilege to share on prayer because prayer is the heart of my life. It's everything for me. And my relationship with God, my desire, which is my prayer, to union with God, fills my mind and my consciousness nearly all day when I can, just lift up my heart and my mind to God. For me personally, I begin the day with prayer and meditation and contemplation. So that starts very early in the morning, between 4 and 4:30, up early, and before the community gets together to pray, which we do early as well, I have a good hour of prayer, silence, contemplation, reflection before I begin. So my community prayer and then my Eucharist or whatever else we be having. But certainly from the moment I'm up in the morning, the first desire I have is to be still before the Lord. And as you said, it's what I receive in that. It's what I bring to my ministry in a community. It's fuel, it fuels me. If for some reason I don't have that time, for some day I may be traveling or whatever it may be and I don't have that time, immediately I know the difference in my day. Immediately I know the difference in my day. So that is top priority for me, for my journey with the Lord. Now, people may think that is strange because I'm a charismatic person. And people may look at me on television or in ministry or in prayer meetings and so on and say, well, how can those two things marry? Because, moved by the Spirit, open to the Spirit, and, using the gifts of the Spirit in praise and rejoicing and all that. And then in one sense, I'm seeing that, and in the next sense, I'm seeing being quiet and contemplation. But it all works together. It all happens together. It's all a part of prayer and my journey to the heart of God.
Well, I have to say, like the first time I interviewed Sister Ruth, and after her first comment on meditation in her life, I thought we could all then go home. So then you will now make my program 5 minutes long, because that's so complete in what you said, Rhonda. But earlier today, and when we chatted, and one of the things we discussed and you mentioned, and I'd like us to explore a little more too, based on what you've said, and maybe what makes the connection between charismatic prayer, which, as you said, is much more expressive, it's outward, it's praise, it's rejoicing, it's external in a way, and no one would necessarily think of you as a beginning, and remember you also said probably ending your day with this level of stillness and silence. But then where maybe that joins, so there is in the journey, is in that inward journey.
That's right.
Toward God. I mean, what is your take on that, and where do you think that we are all on that journey, and that or can we in ourselves create or find a deeper desire for that journey?
I always like to think of life as a journey. Sometimes we get so caught up in life itself, we think that life is today and tomorrow and yesterday. But, life is a marathon, it's not a 100 yards dash, And I think if we desire to be on this journey to holiness, or journey to the heart of God, if we desire that, we take little steps at a time. So I remember when I had my experience with God 39 years ago, I had this terrible desire for God and burning desire for God. And I said, God, I'm going to be a saint. I'm ready. After 20 years, I realized I was having a little difficulty. So I said, Lord, I'm going to be a saint when I'm 90. But as I'm getting nearer to 90, I think I'm going to have a little difficulty too. But the desire is always there. And I think prayer is a desire. It's a desire that God gives us as a gift, He breathed His own Spirit into us and made us His. And that desire for God in each one of us is given by God and is answered in prayer. And I think as we make the journey, and we never reach, the journey is always ahead of us, and it's always before us, but we know that we are on this journey, and we avail of ourselves of the gift of prayer. Because when we really think, if we want to be united with God, one with God, Jesus, I want to be one with you, and just think like the Lord, and let my heart beat with God, and so I want to be that oneness with God. God is always present to us. It's we who are not present to Him. He's there. He's here. He's in us. He's all around. He's in everything. I look at you, and God is in you. He's always present to us. It's we who are not present to Him. So how are we going to come into His presence? With our cluttered minds, our huge agendas and desires and whatever else we have in our lives, our busyness and our families, how are we going to get there? Just by being still. How else are we going to do it? And He gives us that gift in prayer if we seek it. So even though I'm a charismatic person and I exercise the gifts of the Spirit and very vocal and very whatever else, dance and sing and clap hands and scream and shout for the Lord, which I can do very well and loud. I won't do it here because it's not, it might be a little difficult for you. But the silence has to happen as well in my life, has to happen. That's the basis, really. That's where I can touch God. That's where healing can come into my life, my unconscious, when I just open myself to God and the presence of God. God could do with me what He wants. He could make me into the person He wants me to be. It's no, if I can surrender and give Him my heart and my soul in prayer.
When you talked about that God is always present and that it is we who, it reminds me of one time I met this Jesuit in Toronto. And it was one of my earliest conversations with him, and he was a teacher at the university where I was. And I remember being so struck by when I said, just as we say commonly, I said something about divine intervention. And he said, it's not divine intervention, God is always there. It's we who jump in and out.
That's right.
God is steady, God is present, God is constant. God is the constant.
That's right. The only constant in the world really is God.
So I think what you're saying is, and what we, the practice that we have learned and the method that we use is giving ourselves, creates an opportunity for us to become more conscious of that presence, to walk deliberately into that presence, and then to learn to be in that presence. And that is your experience of early morning and late evening.
And then too,
prayer.
what I find too, of course, that is going to be extended in my life. So because I can sit with God, in the stillness in the morning, and let that be part of my prayer and my journey, many times during the day that can happen in a minute or 2 minutes. That same touching God and touching His presence. I could be in my office and just for a few minutes, just be silent and just connect with this God who is living in me, the love, the power of His Spirit alive in me, and hear the Spirit just saying in my soul, come to the Father, and just touch that and then go on. So it's not only at the moment of prayer where I would sit and make a conscious effort to spend 15, 20 minutes, half an hour, whatever it is in silent prayer. But that could be extended throughout our whole day. Our whole day, as we continue on a journey. It's not going to happen the first time we do it, but it's a journey, it's a length, it's a staying with it, it's a commitment to it, it's a getting accustomed of being in God's presence and opening our hearts to God and to His presence.
Yeah, I mean, wouldn't you say, well, what I hear you say too is how the practice at the two ends of the day eventually sort of draws you into itself at different points in the day. So sometimes you are not even aware of what or whatever you just find yourself being drawn in, and that, and as you say, that gives you back so much. That allows you, well, the work. Incredible work you do.
Well, that's just an overflow from your prayer, from your prayer, and even being outside and you're just passing the garden or something, you see a beautiful flower, and just for a moment, you could still touch the presence of God in that moment, and that's a journey that we can make in prayer, and I really encourage people all the time. People come, charismatic people, I always say to them, try to do some meditation in your life. Try and put that in place. Invite people to come to the program here on a Monday morning. Everybody and anybody who comes into my office, I always tell them that, because of what it has done in my own life,
That's so beautiful. And it's so significant, And we have done different things, different programs, as you know. One of them based on Father Lawrence's discussion of the Wheel of Prayer. Basically, you have what you've described as that. All the various expressive and outward forms of prayer, more outward, that all lead to this central core.
Center.
And when you said, at the end of the day, that is fundamental, that's the basis. It's at the heart.
But could you imagine, Jesus said in John's Gospel, if you believe in me, I will come, the Father and I and the Spirit will come and dwell in you. So when we recognize and understand that word, and that's where the reading of the scriptures and the Lectio comes to, and that word becomes real to us, we realize Jesus is living in me. Jesus is alive in me. In my baptism, He came to live in me, Father, Son, and Spirit. So if I can sit and just get in touch with the center of my being, God is alive. And you know, strangely enough, in our times, many times in our prayer meeting and so, and we would praise the Lord a lot and lift up our hearts in prayer and praise and rejoice and worship God who is present as we meet. Because Jesus said, where 2 or 3 meet, there I am in the midst. So He's there with us too when we meet. And after we have a time of praise, we can go into a deep, deep silence together in our prayer meeting for a minute, 2 minutes. And I just say, just enter into the silence of God who is here with us. And everybody in that prayer meeting, hundreds of people, will be silent, just receiving and touching God's presence in their soul. I mean, it all works together. It's all one God. We're all on the same journey. And, you know, we can take different paths to get to it, but it's all one. It's a oneness in it.
Absolutely. And it's so, we've also recorded a program earlier about, well, young people and the lack of centeredness in today's world, and their yearning and their longing without even unconsciously for this center. And we talked a little bit about how fundamental it is to build the inner life, to build, to take that inward journey that allows you to have that very, very personal encounter. Otherwise, you will never understand, like for me, what you just said about the indwelling. You know, you really have to have your own
experience,
your own personal experience, wouldn't you say?
Yes, I mean, and many of the theologians in the last 50 years have said that in this time that we are living in now, unless we experience our faith, we would lose it.
Yes.
If we don't experience and Paul VI said that too after Vatican II. The time we are living in is essential that we are open to God's Spirit, because unless we experience our faith, we would lose it. Now, we experience our faith in an encounter like a Life in the Spirit seminar or whatever it may be. Many other ways, of course, we can experience our faith and encounter God. And certainly in meditation, you encounter the indwelling presence of God.
So I'm going to invite you to meditate with me.
Praise God.
And I'm going to invite our viewing audience to do the same.
Okay,
we are just going to strike this little gong here. I'm going to say the opening prayer we use, and I'll have the joy of sitting with you.
Praise God, and I have the joy of sitting with you too.
Thank you, Rhonda, for being with us. Let me say the prayer first. Heavenly Father, open our hearts to the silent presence of the Spirit of your Son. Lead us into that mysterious silence where your love is revealed to all who call. Maranatha. Come, Lord Jesus.